I have a lot of watches, and I'm going to be completely honest, I don't need a lot of watches. And so this is going to be a little bit of a tough video because it's going to be opening myself up to talking about some of my own struggles. And just like everyone else out there, I'm not perfect. And sometimes I get off track. So yeah, it feels a bit odd kind of opening yourself up this way and talking about these things. But I think it's vital that I do talk about these things. So I'm going to talk about it. One of the things that I have come to realize that if I don't talk about these things or open up about my own personal struggles is that it could very easily give this illusion of that I have this perfect life, which is not something that I am intending to portray. And it is something that I have. I feel content with my life. I feel very positive in the trajectory that I am moving my life in. But at the end of the day, just like everyone else, I have my own issues and I have my own struggles. Now, I think there are a fair bit of YouTube creators out there that do purposely create a perfect life illusion because it's part of their brand and part of how they need to portray themselves. And I am not one of those individuals. I have no intention of giving that illusion. But if I'm only showing you the positive things in my life, then the end result is this takeaway of not showing you my struggles. So one could watch all my videos and be like, oh wow, this guy has it all figured out, or this guy leads the perfect life, because I'm not choosing to talk about my own struggles or some of the negative things. So one of the areas where I certainly have gotten off track, and a great example of this, is me acquiring too many watches. I became addicted to purchasing watches. So why does this bother me? Basically, it's not the person that I want to be. And at the end of the day, it really didn't follow my own set of values that I have set up for myself. So before we dive into it, a very quick, brief history. I think when I was like 10 years old, I started wearing a watch and I absolutely loved it. I loved always having time on my wrist and being able to help me to keep track of time. And so I've always worn a watch. And this habit started when I was like 10 years old. In 2017, I had a couple of watches, nothing substantial. I'd say maybe four, I think. And then in 2018, I started becoming interested in different watches. I started accidentally like going down this rabbit hole of like, oh, maybe I should look into watches. So from 2018 to 2020, I went completely overboard with my watches. Now, at a certain point, I realized that this was a waste of resources, mostly of time, energy, and money. The money aspect I was able to absorb. I have a decent paying job. And so it wasn't like a financial burden. So you can see here, I have like 17 watches. Now, some of these watches I had before the 2017 benchmark. But so let's say I acquired like 14 watches within that time, that 2 to 3 year time span. On average, I mean, the prices of the watch vary anywhere from like $80 to up to $300. I have not spent more than $300 on any of these watches. The only exception is my fitness watch, which I'll talk about later. So, assuming an average of like $200, I basically spent like close to around $2,800, almost $3,000 in a 2 to 3 year span. So basically ended up being a $1,500 a year hobby, roughly. And again, I was able to absorb it. It wasn't the best use of my money. And I don't necessarily feel proud that I've spent all of this money on that. But that's not my main feeling of maybe shame with all of this or guilt. is that a lot of the stuff just doesn't serve a purpose. And I ended up going down a rabbit hole that doesn't add any value to my life, and frankly isn't the person that I want to be. And so there are going to be many lessons in this video, and hopefully I can keep it somewhat coherent as we go through the lessons that I have learned through this entire process. And it's important to note that whenever something like this happens in your life, where all of a sudden you realize like, whoa, I really got off track, it's never too late to get back on track. And I look at this now and yeah, I feel, or I used to feel like ashamed or guilty of this, but I also look at this and I look at this as a very important life lesson. And so that's my approach. I'm going to look at this and say like, hey, look, I learned a lot from this, and this is not the path that I want to go down in the future. So I'm going to take this opportunity to learn and talk about it. Now, in 2017, 2018, I thought this is what I wanted, as I talked about. And I thought that I would just rotate watches. So, maybe for a week I would wear this watch, and then maybe the next week I would wear this watch. No big deal if I had like 10 to 12 watches, I just rotate them through and I would get enjoyment out of that. And a big part of this is I was letting watch influencers tell me what I wanted. Now, to be clear, a lot of these watch enthusiasts, I don't think there's any really, there's no malintent. These are just people that are really passionate about watches. And it's so easy because I don't think there is really a malintent behind any of it. I mean, obviously some of these influencers are, they have their own watch shops and they're trying to sell watches. But a majority of them are truly like, they really just are passionate about a watch. And it's very easy because of that to get sucked into it. I thought that I really liked watches for different reasons. And so a big part of it is these influencers, I would watch them, and it was me trying to figure out like, what watch did I want? Did I want mechanical, quartz, or digital? Did I want a field watch or a dress watch, a diver? And then, I would be sucked into like some of the influencers telling me that like, hey, like if you're going to a dinner party, you should wear this kind of dress watch. This is the code in the watch that you're supposed to wear. And then they'd be like, oh yeah, they're absolutely right. And then at a certain point, I was like, wait a minute, I don't go to dinner parties. And if I have like a wedding or something that's important, one of the other watches I have probably will work just as well. And so, I was purchasing a lot of these watches because I thought it was neat and I thought I enjoyed it. When in actuality, I was really what I really wanted, I think, was just one watch that I would just wear all the time. And I was not happy. I would always nitpick and find something wrong with a certain watch. Like, oh, this one's just a hair too big, or I don't like how this one looks in this setting. And all these things. So a part of it was my own not being happy with what I had and always looking for that next best thing. And that in itself kind of fueled this whole addiction, right? Like I'm like, all right, well, this one has this little flaw in it, so I got to look for the next thing. Which is not good. And that's a big lesson in all of this, is sometimes you just have to be you just have to realize that what you have is good enough and be happy with that. For the most part, I don't really care too much what people think. I mean, that statement that I just said is not entirely true, and it's a lot more complex than that I'll save for a separate video. But I was purchasing watches thinking that that it would enhance my overall look. And again, I wasn't necessarily doing it as a status symbol. Like I don't have a Rolex, or like I wasn't spending money on, I wasn't spending a lot of money on the watch. as like a status symbol, but like I was just trying to blend it in with my own personal style, if that makes sense. So it wasn't like, oh, look at me, I'm wearing a Rolex. It was more like, hey, I have a field watch, I'm into fitness, this is who I am, kind of thing. Which again is not a good reason to be wearing a watch. And so like I was purchasing watches for what I thought would be like different occasions and different settings that I was trying to portray. And, I realized in the end, no one cares, right? Like I would be wearing a field watch thinking that like, oh, someone might comment on that or something like that. And for the most part, like no one cares. Like, oh, you got a watch. Like no one cares. And so, that took me a while to realize as well. So how did I break this cycle? Well, at a certain point, it became very aware to me that I had way too many watches. Like I just couldn't keep up with the rotation. I was like, oh my gosh, like, I got 17 watches. Even if I wear like basically, I would be wearing a watch. If I rotated all of them, I would be wearing a watch at most 2 or 3 weeks a year, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is insane. Like, what am I doing to myself? And this isn't making me any more content or happy with life. This just doesn't make any sense. And so that kind of snapped me into things. And also the other thing was fitness. So I got into running, tracking my stats, and I started using my phone. And then eventually I moved to a GPS watch. Now, I'm not saying that you need a GPS watch to do fitness. And in fact, you may want to start out with nothing. That's how I started out, and then see if you enjoy the fitness journey. But if you do enjoy the fitness journey, and again, this is not a must, but like for me anyway, the GPS fitness watch has been very, very helpful. I will track all my strength training with it because it helps keep me on track for that. All my Nordic skiing, my biking, hiking, using it for maps and navigation, like all of these things, I find it incredibly helpful and really adds a ton of value to my life. And that's the key. It's adding value to my life. I'm using it every day and I'm using it as a tool. It serves a huge purpose in my life and it is fantastic. So much so that I wear this every day. And that's all I need. Now, before all of this, I thought I would never ever use a smartwatch. Now, this is not like your typical smartwatch, like an Apple Watch. Those, like, I do not want to charge every day. So that was like a boundary that I have set a long, long time ago. Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me. But this fitness watch, if I have everything running, I get, what is it? Something like, I think like I can track up to 70 hours of GPS stuff before it needs a charge. I can go 17 or 19 days in between charges. And then if I put it on battery saver mode, where I'm not tracking my heart rate and all these other stats all the time, I can get up to 35 days with this thing. So the bottom line is I do not need to charge this every day. And for me and the amount that I use it, I'm charging it about every 10 days. Completely acceptable, well worth the trade-off for me. And so that, this is a long journey of me buying a ton of watches that now just sit here. I do nothing with. Complete waste of money, resources, and mostly time. All the time I spent researching watch and getting that next fix. Unbelievable. So this entire journey has taught me that I want to use my watch as a tool. I have a lot of great settings on here. Like I'll use the alarm setting. I will look at it gives me the temperature of the weather. All very, very, very convenient. I don't want phone notifications, so I have 0 phone notifications coming to my watch. That just would irritate the heck out of me. Yeah, super, super helpful to use. Now, I've also come to the conclusion that if a fitness watch did not exist, I would prefer a digital watch. Why? Because I can set alarms and I can set other time zones very, very easily. So, aesthetically, I like the look of an analog watch, like something like this or like this, but practicality, I'm going to go with a GPS fitness watch or a digital watch. It's just so much more useful. So what am I going to do with all these watches? I don't know yet, to be completely honest. If I could only keep one, it would be my fitness watch. If I were allowed 2 watches, it would be my fitness watch and this G-Shock. And the reason for that is when I put the fitness watch on the charger, I still like wearing a watch. I enjoy knowing the time all the time. I've become obsessed with it just to keep me on track. So I continue to do that. And if I could keep a few more, I would, for special occasions, maybe it would be, these watches here. But otherwise, this other box of watches, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I'm never going to wear it. So other things that I have done going forward is I have stopped looking at new watches. I don't watch any videos on it anymore. No websites. It's just not worth it. And I feel much better. I feel like I have a lot of closure. And honestly, this is all we can do. At a certain point, you recognize you have an issue and you just try to improve it. And most of all, what I really want to communicate with this video is that everyone has struggles that they're working on. And I think it's vitally important that I share my own struggles, because I don't want to give this false impression of that I have this, that I don't struggle myself. And I think it's incredibly valuable and to learn from others people's struggles. So to know that you're not alone, right? You look at a YouTube influencer and you're like, oh my gosh, they must have the perfect life. They've got it all together. When in actuality, they may, or probably they don't. And they have their own issues. They have their own things that they're struggling with. So I definitely plan on talking about things that I struggle with in the future. Because again, I think that is just super important. So anyway, kind of weird to open yourself up this way. First time I've done a video like this. So as always, I'm going to end it here. Lots of lessons, and I don't know, maybe I'll keep these watches just to remind me of a path that I went down and I was able to fix and get out of. But anyway, as always, thanks for watching, and I hope you found this helpful.